Nathan Powell. How's it going, buddy?
Hey man, pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah, it's great to connect with you again. We've known each other for several years now, and I just want to say just right off the bat, I am like forever grateful to you and Nusi because I think that you guys were not the first, but definitely in the first batch of customers on Audience Ops uh, back in the day,
Yeah, man.
and you know, definitely like helped that business like get off the ground for sure. Like I think
It seems like a lifetime ago now. That does.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you guys were probably within like the first 5 or 10 early customers on that. So that
Oh
was
wow,
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, man. That does seem like a really long time ago. I mean, how long ago was that? I mean, what are we talking?
Well, I launched that in 2015. So and I think you signed on like somewhere right at the beginning in
Okay.
2015. So
Funnily enough, somebody messaged me on LinkedIn 2, 3 days ago saying they found the article that you'd done about Nusi, and I think I was mentioning the article on the blog, and
oh
they
yeah, you were
found me
like a case
via
study
there.
for
Yeah, and they found me via there, and they came to message me via LinkedIn. I was like, wow,
oh,
that
very
was a
cool.
long time ago. Yeah. So it's still bearing fruit.
Incredible, incredible. Well, you've been around the block on multiple things since then and before then. So yeah, I mean, today, why don't we talk about Nusi a little bit, and then we'll get into your new stuff. For those who don't know, Nusi is it's like a proposal software. I mean, why don't you tell the story of like, you don't have to go through the whole life story here, but like, how do you describe it and your time with it, and where did it go from there?
Yeah, so Nusi, proposal software. Back in 2013, that was when I first sort of started, I guess, coming up with something. Basically, I was just desperate for a project. It was going to be my first sort of, sort of diving into a product kind of thing. I delved into writing some books and things like that. And I was, you're a designer, you know the story. You're working on websites for the clients and products, and it gets to that point where you want something for yourself. And to be honest, I kind of probably did it completely the wrong way around. I was looking for something to do without really delving into the problem.
I feel like everyone does it the wrong
I
way.
think so,
There is no right
yeah.
way.
I think so, yeah. But
But your background,
anyway,
you're a designer
yeah.
first, is that
So
right?
yeah, I'm a designer still, but I was a freelance designer for a good few years before I even started looking at Nusi. And one of the areas I was struggling with was creating client proposals. I used to go the whole InDesign route and then create a PDF and then email it and then get them to sign it in some other system and stuff. And so I was looking around at the time, and to be honest, there was only really Ruben's BidSketch. Of course, everyone knows BidSketch. The OG of proposal software, at least in the creative side of things, and very little else. So I thought, okay, I'll have a stab at that. I'll see what I can do. See if I can do something that fits my needs a little better. And so I started messing around with that. Came up with I'd been given a bonus by a client, which was very nice. And I decided that I was willing to commit that bonus to building an MVP. And it was very little money. I think it was like 3 grand, I want to say, maybe, to get this MVP. So you can imagine. I mean, it was a long time ago, but still, it was a very little amount of money. But I thought that's what I'm willing to throw away. And
What year was this? Do you remember?
this 2013, yeah,
Okay.
2013. So just went and found a freelance developer. Got a really, really awful MVP done. It was the buggiest thing you've ever seen. You didn't want to breathe on it too hard because it would just fall apart. But managed to get a couple of customers. I have no idea how really that happened.
Really? Like back then, like people were just
Yeah,
sort of like searching for that.
yeah. I think one thing I did well, and speaking of going back to content, one thing I did well from the very beginning was I started writing before I even had the product. So I was writing about freelancing. I was writing about creating proposal, getting new clients and stuff. So I think I was already able to draw some kind of attention before the product was even really, certainly in its infancy. The MVP, like I said, it was terrible. But I managed to get a couple of customers, and I thought, okay, well, that's validation enough. for me, because even the customer development interviews I've done, and I did actually do a few, they all told me that they wouldn't switch from their current systems to something new. You know, they all wanted to stay within design and PDF and email and all that, because they wanted complete control, as designers always do. You know, we want complete control over how it looks and everything. So, but
so how did you get it built, and when did Michael, your partner on that?
Yeah, so the interesting thing was I started doing some consulting work for a big startup. I think it's Spain's only unicorn, as Michael very proudly states every time we speak to him about it. I started doing some consulting work for them, and Michael happened to be the lead developer there. And as I had so many bugs and it was such a terrible piece of software, I had to keep paying a developer to fix this stuff. The guy I'd used originally I wasn't happy with, and so I turned to Michael, who I recently met. And so he started freelancing on the project, and he came to me actually shortly afterwards and said, "Nathan, I think this is going to end up costing you a fortune. It's terrible code. It's a terrible piece of software right now." After he'd done a few small projects for me, he said, "How would you feel about taking on a co-founder?" And I was like, "Yeah, shit, yeah, I can't afford to keep paying this, And knowing what I know now as well, I think it was probably a kind of a good thing.
That seems like a really cool turn of events there to like find your partner. I'm always sort of like fascinated with how business partnerships start, because there were a few times where I came close to partnering up with someone, but for one reason or another, different reasons each time, I've always ended up basically solo on all my stuff.
But have you looked in the past, or is it?
Well, like in your case, it's like for a developer to come on as a co-founder, usually it's the designer or the business guy or the marketing guy trying to convince a developer that like it's worth like building for equity, right? But in this case, it seems like Michael was like, this has legs and I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't remember how many customers it had when Michael said, I'd be willing to come in on this with you. It would have been, it's probably not even a handful. I'd probably say 2 or 3. I really don't remember, but it would not have been many. And of course, I was in the famous stage of charging $5 a month. I was like the typical charge nothing and get hundreds and hundreds of customers. And the more you get, the lower you can price it. All that rubbish that people put into your head, when you're just starting out, and that was what it was. But so we're quickly able to take it from the original MVP to what became sort of V1. And again, thanks to content, and like I said, later on, you guys helped us out with that. But thanks to content, that was how we were able to build a customer base. And to be honest, it was a SaaS. I wouldn't say it went quickly. It wasn't. It was definitely the slow ramp, but it did. I think within 2 years we were probably both full time on it, and I think for 2 sort of co-founders to be able to live off it in such a short space of time, I think that's
pretty incredible,
surprising, and also incredibly pleasing as well. There is one thing we should bear in mind as well, and whenever we speak to our counterparts in the US, is the cost of living in Spain is far lower than the UK, than France, than the US. I think, certain things like health insurance, and those are things we don't really have to worry about.
Yeah. So I guess it's lower, but it's not like you're in the third world, right?
And particularly we're in Madrid as well, and Madrid is expensive, and it's the capital of Spain. So that was definitely one caveat, that we were able to live off it. But it was great because it meant, we could put all our time into it, and we could, I particularly could write more content. Back then I used to do more podcasts, and I ran up a couple of podcasts and those kind of things. So it was great. But I think we ended up having, I think we had customers in like 54 countries or something, and about 60 countries by the time of that.
Aside from like content, and sort of like, so there was like content and SEO, but do you think that there was like the viral factor with Nusi, like people sending proposals and then seeing like powered by Nusi?
We were terrible at tracking how we got customers. And so it was always far easier to say that everything came from content. That is the honest answer. because that was pretty much the only thing we ever really did. I mean, don't get me wrong, we did experiment with a lot of things. We experimented at engineering as marketing. You know, we built a couple of other products. We bought another product as well. Tiny reminder from Jane, who
Oh wow, I didn't realize.
yeah,
I probably knew that and I forgot.
yeah,
That's awesome.
that came under the umbrella and became Nusi Reminder, and
Oh
so
yeah.
we did do a lot of other things, but we were never really just that great on tracking where everything came from and where it went to and all that stuff. You should know and should, even if it takes you a long time to figure it out, there should be a point where you get there. And I don't feel that we ever really got there. So.
So I'm curious. Like, I mean, we'll get to, because you're no longer at Nusi.
No.
We'll get to your exit and all that in a minute. But I'm curious. Like during the time that you were working on Nusi, aside from you and Michael, did the team grow?
No, we did experiment a couple of times. I was desperate to get another developer on board. Once things got to a certain level where, like I said, you know, we were both living quite well. I was desperate to take on another developer because being a designer, I want things to move more quickly. You know, I want to get these features out, things that we can design in a few hours or a day or a week. You know, obviously can take development, you know, potentially months. So I was very impatient in that sense and was desperate to take someone else on. We did dabble with taking on a junior developer. We dabbled with taking on. We even took on a summer intern, which felt very grown up.
No customer support help or anything like that?
No, we always handled customer support ourselves between the two of us because there was never that much. I think we definitely could have done a lot better job with all of these things. We definitely could have and should have delegated a lot of this a lot earlier on. I know you're a big fan of that yourself, and just getting that annoying crap.
Well, you know what I'm really interested in right now. I guess I'm always interested in is like how the nature of the work changes as the business goes through different stages, right? Because like, you know, I'm in a SaaS business now with Zip Message, but it has never really grown. Like I haven't really been able to grow a SaaS business to the size that I had Audience Ops before, and that was a very different type of business. That like Audience Ops was a people service business. Like the team kept growing and we had a process and all that. But I find with a SaaS, we're just constantly creating. We're always in creative projects. We're creating features. We're creating new marketing projects, and it's much less about like the process and.
But I think you're in a particularly lucky position here, or in a good position that's, you know, a good position to be in, is that you're also you're touching everything because you're the developer or one of the developers. You're doing the design as well. You know, customer development.
I do enjoy it because of that. I really like being like in the full stack, but it's also like so much more work.
Yeah. But it keeps things interesting though, right? Because
Yeah.
you're all, and it's easy to keep the passion up as well, I think, because you are seeing all those different areas grow. And then the areas that you don't want to be working on anymore, maybe, for example, customer support, which, to be honest, I was never a huge fan of. Michael was fantastic at it.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. Like, so during the years that you were working on Nusi, obviously you have like the days where it's the startup, like you're just get the MVP, get the very first customers. But then there's like this next phase where you've grown the customer base to where you and Michael can both pay yourselves a full salary, right? That seems to me like a new phase of the business. What does it look like? What changes at that point?
Everything changes and kind of doesn't, because you're expecting it to stay the same. You're expecting to still be the designer, and Michael is still expecting to be the developer. Yes, we've taken on extra roles that perhaps, you know, we'd never done before, support being one of them. I'd never done support ever. I'm not the most patient person either, so as you know, running support, sometimes you have to have infinite patience. And so everything changed in the sense that all of a sudden, because those designs I'd done could perhaps be waiting for months before they saw the light of day, or before the, you know, customers were able to get their hands on them. So for me, there was a really big shift, and I think it was almost, it's probably one of the things that took me to the end of, do you know what, I'm not so sure that I'm so passionate about this anymore, because I think maybe that whole initial excitement and passion, and yes, this is, we're growing this, we're both doing what we're great at, which is design and development. Once that did start to change, and I think, because I'm no longer a designer anymore, I'm a business owner, and all the responsibilities that come with that, the taxes in Spain they're horrendous. I mean, I know people who have left Europe and gone back to the States to run their businesses, because Europe is a nightmare.
Well, there's plenty of nightmares on that front here in the US.
I can imagine, I can imagine. But just everything that I was never been a part of before, it brings those extra pressures and takes away from the joy, I think, of the reason that you started this, the reason that you wanted to build this business, the reason. And my idea was always for it always to be a lifestyle business. I never intended, I never had the intention of, this is going to be something huge. We're going to get funding. We're going to, we're going to have a board. That wasn't something that interested me. I wanted to be out on my bike, riding in the mountains and making enough money to make a decent living and support my family.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good segue into take us into the beginning of the end for your time on Nusi. Like what led up to that, and yeah.
I think it was we both pretty much sort of taken our own individual roles as far as we could, as far as developer and designer. So we were doing the additional roles, obviously, sales, marketing, customer support, accounts, everything else you can imagine. And we hit a plateau. And I think first time around we managed to sort of wiggle out of it and start seeing growth again. I can't remember now how we did this exactly. I'm going to say content, but who knows? I just push it back to content because I have no idea. And then we plateaued again. But the interesting thing was between 2014, which is when Michael came on board, and probably say 2017, there was an explosion of proposal software SaaS businesses, and they literally did just come up out of the woodwork. Which was because initially there was BidSketch, obviously, and ourselves, and maybe one or two others, and then all of a sudden we even had our website completely stolen and hijacked, and somebody copied it in Brazil and the exact copy, and there were all these competitors.
Amazing how that happens. You see that happen all the time with popular SaaS products, right? And it's like it always. I mean, obviously, these things happen, but I could just never get my mind around, there is somebody somewhere who is like, I am going to copy this line for line, design for design, and I think that's okay, and I can live with myself. I don't understand that at all. No,
I don't understand it either, and but as you say, these things do happen, and obviously we reached out and said, hey, that better come down right now, and it did. It disappeared, thankfully. So. But so
I remember one back in the day when I was running Restaurant Engine. There was I saw a couple of ripoffs of Restaurant Engine, and one of them was French, and they created a French version of Restaurant Engine, same exact logo and everything, but the word was in French. It was incredible.
Yeah, they say it's the best form of flattery, right? But imitation. But I don't know. You can take it to extremes, and literally ripping off someone's work is the extreme nobody wants to be taken to. But so everything changed. There was a lot more competition, and we peaked, and we couldn't get past that plateau. Morale for me personally started to take a dive. And I became more and more frustrated with the speed at which we were able to ship. We went through several meetings, phases of meetings, where we would try and come up with alternatives to the current situation. Whether it's taking on help, taking on development, doing this, doing that, selling this piece of the business off, and getting some finance, looking at funding, all these kinds of options that are on the table when you're a SaaS.
So those were all just ideas that you were considering?
These were all just ideas that we were considering to try and, in my mind, save the business. or save my passion for the business, at least. Because I thought if we can't get past this plateau, then I'm just not interested anymore. This is why I created a lifestyle business.
I have totally been there. Obviously I came to the end of a few different businesses and ended up selling, but the one where I really resonate with that is probably the end of Restaurant Engine. I owned that for probably like 4.5 years, something like that. And that was one where I just remember like we hit some sort of plateau, and I had tried a bunch of stuff and then it wasn't working. And then I just lost the creative energy to keep trying new ideas. It was like, it does, especially as a designer and a creative person, like there are only so many creative projects that you can really take on to kind of create your way out of it. Like,
exactly. And especially
and I mean, that includes marketing too. Cause like marketing is a creative that like, there's creativity involved in that too. But if you're just hammering and it's not working,
and I think Michael probably felt a bit trapped in the fact that he was the sole developer, and while we could have potentially taken on maybe a part-time developer, we weren't rolling in money. And of course, Michael didn't want to take on a junior developer because he didn't want to have to then dedicate the time to bring him up to speed or her up to speed on everything. And it was kind of, well, you might be gaining something, but then you're also sinking a lot of time and effort and all those things. So we just couldn't get to this place where we were both in agreement on how to move forward. And in the end, I just said, well, here's another option. And that other option is you buy me out and I disappear into the mountains.
Was there what about like just selling it outright? Like he really wanted to stay?
No, that was one of the options. If I remember correctly, and funny that this should stick in my mind, I came to the final meeting in air quotes with five potential outs. 5 options to move forward. One of them was to sell. One of them was for Michael to buy me out. And to be honest, I can't remember the others because those were the most poignant.
Yep.
And Michael was adamant that he wanted to continue. Michael was adamant that he wanted to continue to pound on Nusi and to try and get it out of this and to keep growing it, because he was again he was completely the same as me, looking for a lifestyle business. He wasn't interested in funding, he wasn't interested in growing something huge. It was just something that he could live off and support. So we kind of said, okay, then I'll sell you my half of the business and we can go from there. So we kind of spoke to some lawyers and got that finished up, and that was kind of that. And I didn't really feel any regret. I didn't feel any loss. I didn't, which was kind of strange because Nusi had been my baby. It had been the shots, the original logos are still on Dribbble. If you go, you can see the original designs and they're terrible, but they're still there from 2013. And it was something that grew from. I left in 2019, so it was it was a fair few years.
So I don't know, what is actually okay for you to share or okay with Michael to share, but how does that sort of thing work for folks who are not really familiar with, if you bootstrap the business and you had a business partner and the partner buys you out, what are the options or the terms or logistics to make that work? I mean, I have a few friends who've done it, and it's like usually some like payment plan over some time. Like,
we only had one option because, like I said, we had X amount of revenue and it was fine for the both of us, but there was nothing in the bank that was sitting there saying, we've got a year's runway here or whatever. So we had to. The only option available was, we're gonna have to sort out some kind of payment plan. And it wasn't ideal. Obviously, the ideal would have been, here's a lump sum for you, because then with that, obviously, I could have gone off. I could have done so many things. Mm-hmm. Started
could
a new
there
business.
Be again, I've never really been in this situation, but could there be just a bank loan where he gets the loan and he pays off the loan, but you get paid out immediately?
Why weren't you there 4 years ago? Didn't even occur to us, that option. Or maybe it occurred to Michael silently and he never said anything. Yeah, that could have been at least an option to discuss, but the option we came up with, and to be honest, I mean, I knew the situation Michael was in. We certainly never ended on. We still speak almost daily, so we still on great terms. So I didn't want to put him in any sort of situation that would be stressful. For him, he's got family, he's got a kids, etc. Same as me. But I didn't want to do that. So we kind of just agreed. Well, we'll do over. I think it was. I don't know. I can't remember how long a time period it was now with that monthly payment.
Mm-hmm.
And
it seems like, from what I can tell, like outsider looking in, it seems like Michael's been doing a pretty good job with Newsy these next few years.
Yeah, I mean, he's still keeping on, and I think. Obviously, any information regarding Newsy since my departure would be up to him to share. But it's still just him. It's still just him doing everything, and still doing his best to grow. And I know he's happy doing that. He said to me many times, it's pretty much his dream just to have a piece of software that can keep going and keep providing for him and his family and provide again that lifestyle business. So it was kind of probably a good end to what it was. It's just a shame that it got to where it did, where I felt that I was just not into it anymore.
Yeah.
But I guess these things happen, and who's to say it might not happen again in the future. But it's kind of it's shaped my thinking for the next project.
So
for the following projects.
Before we dive into to the thing that you're excited about right now, and we're going to get into that in the next episode, I just want to wrap up this one with, so what happened next? Like you came to the agreement, you officially exit Newsy. Like you sort of disappeared from the internet there for a little while.
Yeah, I went dark. I've always had a problem being in front of people. Even when I was playing in bands when I was a kid, I would stand with my back to the crowd. I just this huge insecurity, and I think social media is terrible for anyone who feels like that. We all know that, and so many people on social media say they're introverts. But for what I see published half the time, I think, hey, is that really true? Are you really an introvert? Because there's something about this that doesn't sit right. But there was also other things about it as well that.
There is a truth to that, though. I mean, like, I don't even think I'm that outspoken on social media, but I do podcasts and stuff. But really, in real life, I'm extremely quiet, like in social situations, especially like, groups and stuff, where I'm not as friendly with the people. But like, 100%, it's a thing. Yeah.
But I think as well that's. If you are able to do the podcast, and you are, which I was able to in the past, and I did, and and I wrote a lot, and all those good things, but it only furthered this thought that, well, should I even be doing this? Not that does anybody want to hear, but should I even be doing this? What does it matter what I have to say? And I still have problems now with Twitter and things like that, where people are giving their truth. This is what it is. This is how it is. And even people that aren't aware.
So many rants on that. We can go off on a whole other episode on that one.
But half the time, I don't think people are even aware that they're doing it. And it's just like, don't give me your truth. I don't care. I mean,
yeah.
And I know as well. So from looking that, I must have done it as well, and I do it as well, and I hate that, and I hate that about myself, and it makes me think it's not imposter syndrome. That's part of it, I think, but it's also this sense of, do we need to be here? One of my biggest heroes years ago, just before I started Newsy, I interviewed for a design job for a company, a SaaS in Australia, doing huge amounts of revenue. And the founder, I think he had like 52 followers on Twitter, and they were doing millions. And the guy just didn't care. It's like, didn't give a shit. Why should I care about Twitter? I'm running a successful business.
Yeah.
And I almost felt envious. And I probably did feel envious. And I thought, I want to be that guy. Why the need? So I think
you're really touching on something that I totally relate to, although I do like to share. First of all, I like the podcast, and I do like to be active on Twitter. But I have been, I would say, in the last like 3 years or so, I have been like literally quieter on Twitter, because I feel like I have sort of lost whatever voice I used to have on there, and I don't know if that's because of what Twitter has become around me. Like, because a lot of it is like, I too just get so frustrated with like people like putting stuff out just to debate or just to sound like they're an expert and they know, quote unquote, the right way to build a business or to not fuck up a business. Like, you know, when I read that kind of stuff, like many times I've been affected by it. Like, oh, that person really knows what they're talking about, so what I'm doing over here must be wrong. And it makes me like second guess and question myself, and it makes literally my work on my business a lot harder, because a lot of this BS that I hear and read on Twitter or wherever else, like it just has an outsized impact on my actual work, and it's not healthy, right? So like now when I try to be more conscious about what I'm sharing, like I'm really trying to not do that. I'm just trying to share real, like, this is literally my work, what I'm creating, what I'm making, and here's why I'm doing it. Because it's what I'm doing every day. I want to kind of share my work with other folks like you, like talented professional people in the industry who I trust their opinion and stuff. Like, I like to be able to share stuff publicly.
I think the problem with social media is it's too easy to be lazy, and if you're lazy, you will just give that minimum character response to somebody who's trying to ask something or trying to gauge something, and oftentimes that can come off, even if you don't mean it that way, it can come off as, it can be misinformation, or it can be misleading, or it can be defiant, or it can be whatever. It's very, very difficult to take the time to give a well thought out answer or reply to somebody. And I notice actually you do that. I mean, when you give a thoughtful response to people's tweets, and to mine as well in the past, but it's very hard to do that. And I just got sick and fucking tired of all of that. So when I sold Nucian, because I was huge into my mountain biking, I ironically had my YouTube channel on mountain biking, and I just thought, fuck it, I've had enough. So I just cancelled everything. I cancelled all my social media accounts and went completely dark, except for the mountain biking channel.
I didn't even really notice that until recently, that you actually have a YouTube channel about mountain
biking. Yeah, because I had to come back. Coming back from the dead is hard. Coming back from the dead is really hard socially.
Bet. Yeah.
Because I just realized that.
Well, what were you doing professionally? Like, did you literally take a break from all like design?
I took a break from everything,
projects and everything.
I took a break from everything for probably, in all honesty, 2 years. I took a break from everything. And I just said, I'm going to ride. I'm going to take the motorhome. I'm going to travel around. I'm going to have a good time. And then I realized, well, at some point I'm going to have to go back, because I don't think I thought it through. Obviously I hadn't thought it through, because I realized, well, if I'm going to go back to product at some point, I'm going to have to be, I'm going to have some kind of presence. Yeah, a network, because I lost touch with everyone, completely everyone. So how do you go back? You have to go back somehow.
Yeah. Did you do any sort of like consulting work or freelance?
I did, yeah. I had to get back into consulting work as I realized the money was coming to an end. And if I want to build this, these next products and things, then obviously I need to get money coming back in. But even going back into that now and realizing that I'd burnt all my bridges, it's like, well, now I have to rebuild all those bridges again and start reaching out to old networks. And how am I going to do that? Well, okay, I've got emails here, and maybe I can do it on LinkedIn. I think I kept LinkedIn because I literally saw no point in LinkedIn anyway. So I thought, well, what's the point in cancelling it? It's pointless. So I was able to find old contacts there. But back on Twitter from zero. And it's weird as well. And again, thanks to the perception that we have on social media, and that I think inherently it's a pretty poisonous environment. There's this image of people we have that when somebody comes in with 0 followers, that you're no one. So it's very hard
I sometimes
to build back up again.
I haven't like killed my Twitter account, but I do think a lot about like unfollowing everyone and just starting over. Like, I don't know. Again, that's another rant for another day. So
The temptation is always there.
yeah. Well, we're going to continue this in the next conversation because you've got something cooking. You've got a new product coming together. We're going to get into that right here. Let me just mark this. So good stuff, Nathan. Thanks.
Cool.